It's kind of just this cool little incubator that we've built for brands who are just a little bit earlier than some others. I love the structure that you guys have built for the account team, and like the media buyer can wear so many different hats because they're so aligned to the incentive structure that you guys are using that they just do whatever the hell needs to be done in order to drive results. And that's actually that's just where we started. So I think it's a really cool system. As brands grow, they kind of graduate and move on to a higher scope of services. We can increase creative, we can increase pages, we can increase services, expand channels. It addresses the need for earlier stage companies that I think is a really interesting friction point for early stage brands as they grow.
Wrong size, wrong color, didn't look right in the living room? There are hundreds of reasons your customers return products, but returns don't have to be goodbyes. They can be an opportunity to complete the shopping experience. Built exclusively for Shopify, Loop lets you create a delightful return experience to attract and retain more customers. By making it easy for your customers to find products they love, they'll come back again and again. See why thousands of Shopify brands like Allbirds, Chubbies, and Brooklinen trust Loop as their return partner at loopreturns.com/DTC. Hello and welcome to All Killer No Filler, the D2C podcast. I'm Eric Dick. Today I am here with Jacob, our pilot program director at Pilothouse, as well as Cam, marketing director at Pilothouse. And we're going to talk about the pilot program. Jacob, tell me, what is the pilot program and why did we start it here at Pilothouse?
Yeah, I mean, what it is a way for brands that are kind of in that, sweet spot of they've proven themselves out, they have sales, but they haven't, cracked the code to be able to turn themselves into that $1 million brand that they want to be. So pilot program's a great way to get in and actually test out a lot of stuff with, a lower initial investment, a lower initial commitment, something where you can test maybe a bit of Facebook ads, Instagram ads, a little bit of creative, a little bit of, page optimization, maybe even a little TikTok stuff. And through that, we test, a little more rapidly and intimately. But at the same time, we're not accessing these larger teams, the creative teams, the page optimization teams. So, for brands that want to get in and, start testing this stuff, start figuring out why they can't become the multi-million-dollar brands. It's a great way to test all these things. The buyers wear a lot of hats. And then once you start figuring out and cracking that code, it'll make financial sense to, spend a bit more into these other larger services. So it's kind of a great way for, brands seeing maybe $20,000 a month to $200,000 or $300,000 a month in that range. It's a perfect fit.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this sort of these the chasms of scale in a way. Like, what in your experience working with as many brands as you have at your time at Pilothouse, like how do you see these sort of these stages of scale with some of the brands that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, there's those newer brands that they have the idea and then they're just getting out to market, just trying to get those initial sales in, build up their awareness, their top of funnel. Then there's kind of the brands that have done that. And these are the brands that are, a great fit for pilot program, but they haven't really, it doesn't make financial sense to drop $5K a day on ad spend when they're bringing in $5K a day. They're looking to bring in 10, 15K a day. So how can they make that happen? Well, sure, they could go, pay and get someone to pay a creative team, pay a studio shoot, all this stuff, which is great once you've hit that floor, but they're not there yet. They need to at least test a little bit of all of it at a reduced rate even, just to figure out what is working. And then you go all in, So that's that final piece, which is the toughest, of course. But yeah.
What's so cool about the pilot program is it I was there at the very first days of Pilothouse. I actually wasn't working for Pilothouse, but I rented office space back in the very early days. And even beyond that, the concept of sort of like do it yourself, scrappy, biased towards action, database, the sort of like essence of Pilothouse in some ways, I think is alive and well in the pilot program. Would you agree, Jacob?
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. The buyers in there are kind of urged to, go beyond just Facebook and Instagram advertising and think a little more strategically about the business as a whole. From, first touch point on ad to last touch point on checkout, they get involved because they do have that personal vested interest. They're actually compensated based on that success. So, goals are set in the pilot program. As goals are exceeded, that's when they get compensated as well, a bit more. So it's very personal in that sense, and they do kind of do whatever they can to move the needle. It's not like they have a set rule of guidelines where they're allowed to contribute. So yeah, it's a great way to bring on another warrior onto your team, essentially.
Cool. Cam, how do you see the pilot program kind of fitting in the Pilothouse ecosystem?
That's a great question. I just think for brands who are growing, it's just an interesting opportunity, and it almost goes back to the roots at Pilothouse. Jacob, like when we were chatting about it yesterday, I love the structure that you guys have built for like the account team, and like the media buyer can wear so many different hats because they're so aligned to the incentive structure that you guys are using and like the actual retainer, that they just do whatever the hell needs to be done in order to drive results. And that's actually like, that's just where we started. So I think it's a really cool system. And then as brands grow, which I think you should definitely, chat through, Jacob, some of these cool stories. As brands grow, they kind of graduate and move on to a higher scope of services, and wrap around some of those other things that you mentioned. We can increase creative, we can increase pages, we can increase services, expand channels, all of these things. So it's kind of just this cool little incubator that we've built for brands who are just a little bit earlier than some others. But it addresses the need like for earlier stage companies that I think is a really interesting friction point for early stage brands as they grow.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the success stories in broad strokes, Jacob, that you've kind of had with the pilot program?
Yeah, I mean, like we've got quite a few clients in there now, and some of the earlier clients have seen like, I'll just get up some numbers here. Like one of our original clients, 130% increase of revenue year over year. And they've kind of elevated themselves to that next level now where it does make financial sense to invest a little more in these other services. So that's a great success story there. Another cookware product that we do, they have 40% increase year over year. They were already, doing $100K a month. Now they're looking close to $200K average revenue, which is, again, that success story of like, okay, let's start investing in, getting creators on board, all this stuff. A few other ones as well, 66% increase quarter over quarter. These are some newer clients here, 81% increase quarter over quarter. Conversion rates on sites, we've seen like 20% upticks quarter over quarter on a couple clients. And, that's not just stemming from the ads, it's stemming from the page optimizations. We're working with the clients on that as well. And I just really think like, oh, sorry, Eric. No.
I was going to ask, we always talk all the time about the brand and performance duality. And I'm wondering in the pilot program, I imagine you're looking for clients that are willing to be flexible with the brand. I imagine if you're, because you're really trying to scrap to find that product market fit, the right audiences, the right creatives. How does the brand versus performance duality work on the pilot program?
Yeah. So typically the brands will need to come up to us with some sort of benchmark. Whatever that may be, and a little bit of assets that we can work with, because to build all that ground up, it does take some investment, and that again is an investment in itself. So they do need to be a bit flexible in the sense that we're going to take this stuff and iterate on it, whatever's working. It might be that scrappy ads are bringing the performance, and the ultimate goal of the pilot program is to increase that performance. So that's typically what we'd lean into at the moment. But at the same time, we do want to be brand aligned. Like obviously there's the longer term play of like things like that can come back and bite you. So there is definitely a balance, but I'd say like it's a lot of brands will hear this thing where it's like, oh, you need to be, doing page optimization. You need to be in creative, flexible there. You got to be doing all this. And they all of a sudden see dollar signs like, oh, I got to invest in all this stuff. But no, really, you can just sort of dabble in all this stuff. And you will see, differences in data. And then that's when you start to follow that golden path, essentially.
That's so cool. And even just thinking about these clients graduating to Pilothouse, they're going to be ideal clients for Pilothouse because they already would have been working in the, at the core of what Pilothouse is about on the pilot program. So by the time they reach the big leagues and they're spending at the levels that those services make sense, they're probably, pretty harmonious clients.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. They're used to kind of what's working, what's not, our system, all this stuff. And it just makes a flawless transition for sure. Yeah.
So here's a question, Jacob. What are some of the things? One of the things that stands out to me that you must be doing likely is using pre-sale pages, landing pages. This is something we talk about all the time. Are there anything? First of all, is that correct? And second of all, are there any other staples that go into that go into your formula for successful pilot program launches?
Yeah. So typically, kind of a way we'll start is because a client might not have cracked that code yet. It's good to think about let's throw a lot at the wall here and figure out what sticks. So we'll test creatives. We'll put a mini bit of maybe $5 a day spending on one creative, $5 on 2, 3, 4, up to 50 creatives sometimes. Really just again getting that initial data in, what angles are working, what ad copy is working. We'll do the same with ad copy. All these different angles. So from there, it maybe requires a couple hundred a day for those first few days of, spend. Then it's really taking those angles and starting to iterate on them, bringing that to pages, starting to test pre-sales versus, collections. That's kind of week 2, as well as combining the winners from those initial tests. And we'll start to see things UGC videos are really working well when paired with testimonial ad copy. Okay, we found a win there. How can we get more of that from the client? What can we provide to the client from our end? And then, what's the play there on the campaign side? So we like to move really fast through that. And this is just how, most clients should be approaching their campaigns when they're, starting a new initiative like this. And from there, it's starting to think about, scaling up, obviously, getting aligned on what sales are coming out, and that roadmap is just step by step, month by month. You want to see that uptick in revenue month over month, but you also want to make sure your returns aren't dipping on that revenue, obviously. So that's kind of our ultimate goal, and that's really how clients should be thinking about new initiatives like this. And it does take some time to reach that next level. 3 to 6 months typically is when we'll kind of see it proven itself out. Yeah.
Very cool. Is there any consulting on the back end side of things during this on email and other retention sides? Or is that just sort of left to the brand during the pilot program?
Yeah, typically the brand will handle that, but we'll just help. We'll definitely support because we do see, what works on, most accounts. Obviously as a brand, you need to make sure your email is dialed in, especially if you're going to be spending on paid ads. If your email is not dialed in, you're just wasting a lot of dollars there. So yeah, making sure that's all set up, tracking, Google Analytics, Shopify, Facebook, Instagram, even some third-party, third-party platforms getting set up. We want to make sure we have all the insight we can get there. So there is some consulting in the sense of we do want to, have everything in place to set you up for success. And again, as a client or as a brand owner, you got to be thinking of that stuff, because if one of those aren't there, the email's missing or tracking's missing or whatever it might be, the whole thing's not going to work. So definitely.
iOS 14.5. The infamous Apple update left D2C brands struggling to find and market to the right audiences. That's why hundreds of D2C brands are turning to Black Crow AI to boost their holiday marketing. Their plug-and-play machine learning technology measures in real time every visitor's likelihood to buy. You can then use these predictions to build predictive audiences for retargeting and prospecting. In short, Black Crow AI can significantly boost ROAS by helping you specifically target people who will actually want to buy from you.
Find out why brands like Magic Spoon, Barabee, and Liquid IV are using Black Crow AI to supercharge their holiday marketing efforts. Visit blackcrow.ai/DTC to request a 30-day free trial. And as I think about how Pilothouse works with clients, you've got the media team, you've got the content team. I think there's a strategy layer in there as well. Whereas on the pilot program, it sounds like you're a bit more like the A team. Sounds like you've got a bit more sort of like vertically integrated, holistic buyers. Can you talk a little bit about how you've built the team on with the pilot program?
Yeah, I mean, the buyers that we're bringing into this definitely have a little experience, like with all that stuff that we mentioned, like creative pages, buying just from their past experiences. But at the same time, the way we run the program is exposing them to all this stuff. So not only are they running like new accounts, before they do that, they're shadowing all of our other accounts. They're learning from our creative teams, they're learning from our page teams, and then they're applying this to these clients. And again, they have the support of myself and the rest of Pilothouse. So although the team may appear small of, one or two buyers and myself, you actually are getting this insight from everyone else. You're just not getting, the allocated tickets through all these other services, because those are, investment, and those are for the large brands that have cracked that code.
I think it's attractive. I think there's probably, it's funny, we just had this mastermind and there was probably 45 brands that came, and a bunch of them, a good, the majority of them probably were in this category of, around, sub 5 million in revenue, maybe a little bit lower in some cases. And I just think, I think a lot of them, when they're thinking about working with agencies, they don't love the idea that they're going to work with a finely tuned machine. I think a lot of people like the idea that they'll be working with great marketers. And I know that in the Pilothouse system, you're also working with great marketers, but I think people like this hands-on approach, especially at that scale.
I wonder if you were to flip the position and put yourself in a brand owner of one of, like, at the size in which you guys are working within the pilot program, like, what questions would you be asking if you were looking for a growth partner?
Yeah, I mean, like, pretty much where should we be putting our dollars is the biggest question. So, I mean, a big part of that is kind of like, it's hard to say because every brand is different. Some come with great pages, some come with a great website, some come with great creatives. So as a brand owner, it's like, okay, I have all this stuff that we have invested in the past. We're getting sales. Like, where is the best place to invest my marketing dollars? And this program allows you to at least figure that out. And additionally, it's like, I mean, every brand has different KPIs beyond just increasing their profit. Like, some, want to increase new customer base. Some actually want to increase repeat customers. So we like to align with that as well. And as a new brand, you need to ensure your buyers are aligned with that. Otherwise, they're just working towards what their goals are. So that's a big part of it. And then at the same time, it's also like, you don't want narrow vision. It's like, hey, this is what's working, let's spend all our money there. You still need to keep testing. That's just like the reality of it. But yeah, doing it efficiently and not going overboard is pretty important, especially at the start.
Yeah, so I'm curious, like, in the pilot program, what percentage of your partners come from teams that are doing this internally and just are maxed out capacity versus teams who have worked with another growth partner and have been burned in some way?
Yeah, I'd say actually quite a few are coming in, and they're people trying to do it themselves. And obviously, as a brand owner, you got all this other stuff going on, like fulfillment, shipping, branding, all this stuff. So it is a lot of hats to wear. And I'd say that's probably 60% of them coming in right now. They maybe are doing it themselves, or they have one team member doing it. So to them, it's freeing up a ton of time. There's obviously a lot of value getting a partner that's aligned with you to take that workload off, and constant communication, weekly calls, all this stuff. You want to make sure you're setting that up. And then the other 40%, they've worked with agencies that they just didn't like, or the agencies didn't have that right focus. They spent too much, didn't see results. It can obviously vary, but the beauty here is you don't want to overcommit to an agency either. It is good to try stuff maybe for 3 months is like the pilot program testing period. That's usually what we see to prove things out. And if it's not working, like, you're going to figure out, you're still going to get learnings out of this to apply, right? And then you can reinvest as needed. But I'd say it's like 60-40 overall.
Obviously, the biggest sticking point for someone thinking about starting an agency or starting up with an agency is often the upfront costs, the retainers. How do the retainers work on the pilot program?
Yeah, so they're kind of liquid in the sense that like a retainer doesn't really cover a certain amount of set things. We'll actually like move and reallocate that around on our end based on what is going to move the needle. So those, again, that buyer wearing a lot of hats, working with the right people, getting pages, creatives, whatever's going to move the needle is what that retainer goes towards. It doesn't require let's renegotiate this or this. It's all flexible essentially.
Which again, it's benefited by having these Swiss Army knife media buyers on the accounts who are doing anything to kind of make those sales work and really get the traction. The thing that I keep hearing again in this podcast is that this is really the pilot program is really to help people generate that traction. I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs are looking for, is to build the traction, build the base that you can scale to those crazy heights off of down the road.
Yeah, exactly. Just get that momentum going and, set your foundations, and you'll start to be a lot more confident in, paying a bit more of an investment to get more sales. So, yeah.
Yeah. And the way I look at it too is if you're doing this solo, I feel like one of the biggest limitations is obviously your time. And in working with your team, Jacob, it sounds like the media buyers, because they get to wear all these hats, it's just like it amplifies the amount of content, obviously, that we can produce, whether that be pre-click, like from an ad perspective, or if we are doing pages. It just, there's no way in hell like a single person is going to be able to do what your team does. So it just frees up that space. It's just like an amplification in my mind.
Nice. If anyone in the audience wants to inquire about the pilot program, how do you recommend they go about it, Jacob?
Yeah, the Pilothouse website has a form you can submit, just mentioning you're interested. You can also reach out by our phone number, and then I'll audit. I'll connect with you guys, and we can do a little audit, see if it's a good fit, and then from there, obviously, we can chat further if needed.
Cam and Jacob, thanks for coming on the D2C podcast today, guys. We'll catch up again soon.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're not getting the D2C newsletter, you can subscribe for free at directtoconsumer.co. And if you want to learn more about Pilothouse's all-killer, no-filler services, take off to pilothouse.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C podcast. We'll see you next time.